Am I the a-hole for saying no to my son's birthday dinner at a trashy, misogynistic restaurant because he's turning into a little sexist?
So, I, 40 female, am a single mom to my soon-to-be 14-year-old son, Jake. Ever since his father and I got divorced a few years ago, I've been doing my absolute best to raise him as a respectful, open-minded, and compassionate young man. But recently, I've been increasingly worried that he's starting to adopt some really misogynistic behaviors. It breaks my heart because I've worked so hard to teach him about equality and respect for women, but it feels like I'm failing somewhere. Let me give you some background on why I'm concerned. Jake has always been a good kid, he's smart, does well in school, and for the most part, he's respectful. But lately, I've noticed little things here and there that make me wonder if he's internalizing toxic masculinity and has become a little brat. For instance, he recently complained about having to help with housework. He said he was, quote,
too busy with school, and I am having trouble with algebra too.
But that excuse didn't sit right with me. Yes, he has homework, but I'm a single mom working a full-time job. It felt like he was devaluing the work I do because I'm a woman, and somehow his schoolwork was more important than the responsibilities we share at home. When I pointed this out, he just gave me a blank stare and said,
Mom, it's not that deep. I have a lot of schoolwork and extracurricular activities.
That wasn't the only thing. The other day, I overheard him on the phone to another one of his insensitive male friends making a comment about how he doesn't need to learn to cook because he'll just eat out when he grows up. I couldn't believe my ears. I explained to him that it's important for everyone to know how to cook, but especially men because society often expects women to handle domestic tasks. He just rolled his eyes and said,
It's not about women, I just don't want to cook.
This is just two of his many examples of this patriarchal behavior. This dismissive attitude has been creeping up more and more, and I'm worried he's heading down a dangerous path of misogyny, like his father. Now, this all leads up to the issue at hand. Jake's 14th birthday is coming up next week, and it's always been a tradition that we go out for a meal of his choosing. This year, he said he wanted to go to his favorite burger place. It's one of those unsophisticated local joints with a bunch of useless objects stuck all over the wall that's popular with young people and beer drinkers. Personally, I've always hated it. The food is greasy, the portions are huge, and the entire atmosphere feels like a relic of outdated gender norms. The last time we went, I noticed a poster of a bikini model hanging in the hallway to the restroom. I was appalled, and I remember bringing it up to Jake at the time, saying that objectifying women like that is harmful. His response?
Mom, it's just a volleyball ad.
Just an ad? Can you believe that? Who is this kid? What happened to my baby boy? So, when he suggested going there for his birthday this year, I felt a pit in my stomach. I didn't want to go back to that place, not just because of that disgusting poster, but because I feel like it represents everything I'm trying to steer him away from. It's not the kind of environment I want him to think is normal or acceptable. Instead, I suggested we go to this vegan restaurant that I really like. It's much more progressive, with inclusive values, and the food is much healthier. I thought it would be a good opportunity to expose Jake to a different kind of dining experience, one that aligns more with the values I've been trying to teach him. When I brought this up to Jake, he immediately got upset. He said it was his birthday and that he should get to choose where we eat. He told me I was being unfair and ruining his special day just because I didn't like the burger place. I tried to explain to him that I wasn't trying to ruin anything, but rather that I wanted him to see why supporting places that promote toxic ideals, like hanging up posters of women in bikinis, isn't okay. I thought this could be a teachable moment about the kind of world we want to live in. But instead, he just got angrier and said I was making everything about me. He said that I have taken him to vegan restaurants before, and he hated the quote,
gross food.
Can you believe it? He stormed off and hasn't really talked to me about it since. But here's where things got even more complicated. My ex-husband, Jake's little hero and father, called me. Now, my ex and I don't agree on most things. I divorced him because of his misogyny. When I told him about the situation from my perspective, he laughed and said I was overreacting and needed some therapy. He said it's just a restaurant and that I'm being too controlling. He told me I'm raising Jake to be soft and that he's a boy who's going to see images of women everywhere, whether I like it or not. I was furious. I felt like he was dismissing my concerns just like Jake had. I remembered all the reasons I divorced that beer-drinking swine after that call. Now I'm left wondering, could I be wrong here? Am I being too controlling or overprotective? Is it really that big of a deal if we go to this burger place for Jake's birthday? Or is this an important stand for me to take as his mother? Am I being tricked by the toxicity of Jake and my ex-husband into giving in like my sisterhood of women had to in the past? I'm not trying to make him feel bad or ruin his birthday, but I also don't want to compromise on my values just to keep the peace. My ex-husband's pig-headed reaction made me feel like I'm fighting an uphill battle, and maybe I'm making things worse by pushing so hard. But at the same time, I don't want Jake to grow up thinking that it's okay to ignore these issues just because they seem small when they are more important than anything else in his life. The other thing is, I don't think this is just about the restaurant. This feels like a bigger issue that I need to address now before it gets worse. Jake is almost 14, and these are the years where boys start to form their identities. If I don't step in now, I'm afraid he'll continue down this path of thinking that women's concerns aren't valid or that certain behaviors are okay because, quote, everyone does it, and he might become a violent women beater beer drinker. I've seen how toxic masculinity plays out in the real world, and I don't want that for him. I want him to be the kind of man who respects and listens to women, who stands up for what's right, and who understands that these seemingly small things add up to something much bigger. At the same time, I don't want to push him away. Jake is at an age where he's starting to assert his independence, and I get that and value that. But where's the line between letting him make his own choices and guiding him in the right direction to make sure he does not become a typical male? I don't want to lose him by being too strict or overbearing, but I also don't want to let go of my responsibility as a parent to teach him the right values and what to think. So, Reddit, I'm really struggling with this. AITA for vetoing his choice of restaurant on his birthday and suggesting one that aligns more with my values? I don't think this is the case, but is it somehow possible that I am being selfish for not letting him have his special day the way he wants? I feel like this is a crossroads for his soul, and I don't want to make the wrong choice.
The OP wrote an edit. Let's check it out.
I see a lot of comments saying that these are not good examples of my son being toxic, so I thought I would give a couple more examples of what I am dealing with. I began to notice when Jake was 8 he started watching stupid superhero movies and playing with his little toy men. He would engage in very violent battles, and I even heard him say that
real men don't cry
when he was playing and talking with those silly toxic plastic men dolls that my ex-husband bought for him. My ex-husband said that he was just being creative and coming up with his own stories, but he never understood that his creativity was coming from the patriarchy and was teaching our son bad gender norms. He would also use horrible language when playing video games with his little buddies. I would hear him say such things as,
"Come on man, don't be such a wimp,"
to other players. How could I not be worried that he was not adopting toxic masculinity by using this aggressive and violent language, and the fact that he was only spending time with boys? I told him that I was worried that his behavior is disrespectful and exclusionary towards women. He claimed that
it is just how gamers and all my friends talk. There are even some girls that join us in our online games.
I couldn't believe that some girls would put up with that language. I was about to track them down and to call their parents, but my son convinced me not to. Boy, do I regret that now.
Man, this mom sucks buttholes. All of her examples seem like her son is just being a normal kid. Let's see what the comments have to say. Username Stay in the Kitchen 89 says,
Back in my day, we didn't have all this feminist nonsense ruining a boy's birthday. A man ate his damn burger, drank his beer, and if there was a poster of some fine-looking tail in a bikini, we thanked Almighty God and almighty capitalism for it. But now we got moms like you policing a 14-year-old because he dares to enjoy a cheeseburger without a side of guilt. You think a kid seeing a pair of tits on a wall is gonna make him start oppressing women? Lady, you ever been to a beach? Titties are everywhere. Society hasn't collapsed yet. And what's this nonsense about values? The only values a 14-year-old cares about are how many toppings he can stack on his burger before it structurally fails and not being embarrassed in front of his friends. You're out here treating your own kid like some kind of sexist war criminal because he doesn't want to eat kale and quinoa on his birthday. Geez, if my mom had pulled this stunt when I was a kid, my dad would have fixed her good. It is no wonder you are divorced. My wife, God rest her saintly soul, was a real woman who knew how to take care of a man and the opposite of your sorry butt. She'd have a steak waiting for me when I got home, cold beer in hand before I even took my boots off. She ironed my shirts, polished my shoes, took out the trash, and massaged my feet while telling me how handsome I was every single night. If I so much as coughed, she'd whip up a 3-course meal packed with protein and vitamins because a real man can't afford to be sick. And if I was stressed, let's just say she had some very creative ways with her mouth to help me relax, if you catch my drift. She never had any dreams, or if she did, she knew better than to share them with me. She lived to make my life easier. But now we got moms out here punishing their own sons for being normal boys. The world's gone to hell in a tofu-scented handbasket. Let the boy eat his burger and be a normal teenager before he grows up, moves out, and only calls you on International Men's Day just to piss you off.
Whoa, how old is the guy? His wife seemed like she had a bad life. Let's see what username Cage All the Men 790 says.
Not the a-hole. You are honestly handling this situation better than I ever could, because let me tell you, I once found myself in a similar mess with my half-baked husband, and I didn't just take a stand, I burned the whole freaking thing down. Let me explain. When I was married to my harebrained alpha male wannabe ex, that walking embodiment of stale beer and shattered dreams, we had endless arguments about kids. I told him from the beginning, clear as day, if we ever have a boy, I'm giving him up for adoption. Period. Why would I do that? Because I knew deep down that raising a boy in this society felt like being handed a ticking time bomb and told, good luck not creating the next Brock Turner. At first he thought I was joking, like the typical clueless moron of a man he was. But I wasn't. I had my reasons. Every time I saw a toxic little boy throwing a tantrum in a store while his mom begged him to behave like an idiotic woman from the 1950s, all I could see was the future. Some entitled man-child who'd grow up thinking the world owed him something because he was born with a Y chromosome. I wasn't about to raise someone who'd call his girlfriend crazy for expecting basic human decency or think women were put on this earth to fold his stupid, smelly, shitty socks. But my ex? Well, he was one of those guys. He thought boys were easier to raise. Easier? Sure, if your idea of parenting is letting them run wild like the animals of the Serengeti, never teaching them accountability, and turning them loose on the world to ruin everyone else's day. I told him I'd rather raise 10 daughters, teach them to smash the patriarchy, and watch them conquer the world than spend 1 minute cleaning up after some future adult male who thinks dishes magically wash themselves. The final straw came when I got pregnant, and we didn't know the gender yet. My ex started saying things like, if it's a boy, we'll name him after me. After him. Like the world needed another version of him taking up space and spreading his bad opinions. I told him flat out, if it's a boy, we're putting him up for adoption, and that's the end of it. He lost his mind. He called me heartless, said I was being dramatic, blah blah blah. The usual man-baby tantrum when they're faced with consequences. I informed him that during the Chinese one-child policy that many Chinese would give up their girls for adoption because they could not raise a precious queen. Oh no, they needed a male heir like they were on Game of Thrones. He just stared at me like an old dotard. We found out the sex of the baby and it was a demon boy. I told him that we were going through with adoption and he refused. Long story short, I left him, walked out at 8 months pregnant, and signed over all parental rights to the child. Those two could have each other. I then decided I could do it all on my own and went down to the sperm bank, and 9 months later, it was a girl. Thank God. And I don't mean that literally, because our concept of God is a male power fantasy where God is seen as an old white bearded man in the sky. Smart people know that if there is a God, she is more likely to be an obese, handicapped woman of color. My daughter is now thriving because I didn't have to fight with her about why women's opinions matter or why housework isn't beneath her. And I'll say this, I completely agree with you about Jake. The little things you mentioned, those are red flags. Big flaming toxic red flags. Let your ex laugh all he wants. Let Jake sulk. You're doing the goddess's work by calling this out now before it's too late. If Jake doesn't like it, too bad. Life isn't a free pass for boys to get everything they want while stomping all over the values we've fought so hard to instill. Stand strong, sister. You've got this.
Wow, that lady was crazy. Let's see what username Get Around Sue78 says.
OP, I think you need to take a step back and really listen to yourself. You're out here diagnosing your 14-year-old as a raging misogynist because he has too much homework to do chores and doesn't want to cook? That's not toxic masculinity, that's just being a teenager. If avoiding housework made someone a sexist, then every kid in history, boy or girl, would be guilty. And the burger place? Come on. The kid just wants to eat a greasy, oversized meal for his birthday, not endorse the patriarchy. He's not sitting there twirling his mustache, thinking about how the bikini poster is reinforcing systemic oppression. He's thinking about how many fries he can fit in his mouth at once. Not every single thing a boy does is some insidious sign of deep-rooted sexism. Sometimes kids just don't want to do chores, don't want to cook, and do want a big dumb burger. Maybe take a deep breath and let him enjoy his birthday before he grows up and writes a memoir about how his mom turned dinner into a feminist workshop. I don't know what happened with you and your ex-husband, but I think he is right about one thing: get some therapy.
Update time.
So, after reading through some of the responses, I am surprised by the amount of negativity towards my position, but after giving it a lot of thought, I decided to stick to my original stance. I know some people might think I'm being controlling or that I should just let Jake have his way for his birthday, but I don't agree. I'm his mother, and it's my job to guide him, even if it means making hard decisions. I told Jake that while I understand he likes the burger place, I still don't feel comfortable supporting an establishment that objectifies women. I explained to him, once again, why it's not okay to ignore the impact of these things, even if it's just a poster to him. I also reminded him that, as he's growing up, he needs to learn that sometimes, making the right choice means stepping out of our comfort zones. Jake wasn't happy, and yes, he's still upset with me. He said I was ruining his birthday, but honestly, I think this is one of those moments where he needs to understand that certain values are non-negotiable. If I don't stand firm on this now, what's next? Letting him believe that small things like this don't matter is how these toxic mindsets start to take root. And frankly, I'm not okay with that. I went ahead and made a reservation at the vegan restaurant, and I've told Jake that this is where we'll be going, and that is final, mister. He'll get over it, he always does. This is a chance for him to see that life isn't just about getting what he wants, especially when it conflicts with important values. He's not always going to agree with me, but I'm confident I'm doing the right thing. I bought him 2 tickets for a feminist workshop that we will both be attending next month. As for my ex, well, he's still fuming and thinks I'm coddling Jake, but I don't care. This is my son, and I'm raising him to be a thoughtful, respectful person, even if it means I have to make unpopular choices. I'm not going to let my ex or anyone else make me doubt my parenting decisions when I know they come from a place of wanting to do what's best for Jake. He even called me the B word on the phone and said that he and Jake wanted to revisit the custody arrangement in court. Can you believe that? Thanks to everyone who supported me. For those who disagreed, thank you for sharing your opinion, but I'm not willing to compromise on this, because you are just plain wrong. Sometimes, being a good parent and a good woman means standing your ground.
You're dragging this poor kid to your vegan restaurant and a feminist workshop for his birthday? That is the suckiest birthday that I have ever heard. I think any judge in the USA would give your ex full custody. Good luck on being all alone now that you drove away your husband and now your son. Thanks for staying until the end. Like, subscribe, and all that other crap below. Pretty please.